I'm Chuck, this is What is the Wheel, and today I'm finally going to start this Predator motor.
We're excited.
Hi! I'm Chuck, this is What is the Wheel, and today I'm finally going to start this Predator motor. That's right, I'm going to try and start my motor today. I have never started it. I took it directly out of the box, took it apart, put the hot rod parts on it, and bolted it to the back of this go-kart. As you can see, it's not quite done yet. I don't have a blower housing on there. I don't have the coil on it yet. It does not have any oil in it, which you always want to remember to put oil in after you put the motor back together. And a couple of other little details, and then we'll give it a shot and see if it'll start. I am not going to sneaky my way around and get it running and then pretend like it was the first start. What you see is what's actually happening. One of the first things I got to do is put the spark plug in it. For right now, I'm going to use this factory plug. I have not bought a performance plug for it yet. I probably will get one at some point. So we have to make sure that our plug gap is correct. They recommend 27 thousandths to 30 thousandths. So you're going to need a feeler gauge. I've got this really cool old feeler gauge. I don't even know how old this thing is. I've had it forever. That has the great gauges for doing spark plugs because it's just a little piece of wire. And so it's a way, when you use a flat feeler gauge, it's possible to put some load on the electrode and or get it crooked, and it makes it a little harder to get an accurate read. But with these little wire gauges, it's very easy to get your accurate read. The only problem is this thing only goes down to 35 thousandths. So I'm not going to be using it for that, but it does have this nice little piece on it right here that allows you to bend the electrode. It'll fit into the electrode like that, and you can tweak the electrode without putting any load on the center electrode, which is pretty cool. But I'm not going to use this for that. I'm going to get high tech, and I'm going to use this thing, which I use for setting gap on my turbo cars because they are very particular about plug gap. And so you basically just screw your spark plug in there, snug it down, and I'm going to use a flat feeler gauge because I'm going to go 30 thousandths, a little wide. I like it a little on the wide side. If the coil's got enough power to fire the plug decently, I think I prefer a little bit wider gap to the wide end of the range. So we're going to stick that in there and see what we got. Goes in pretty easy. So we'll just spin this adjusting knob down and just give that a little tweak, and then check it again. And just like when you're setting your gap for your valves, you won't, and I probably just got too tight there. When you set your gap for your valves, you want it just a little bit of drag. And so, still a little bit too easy. And so now, I have gotten it a little too snug, as I expected I would. So I'm going to use my tool here to pull that electrode out just a little bit. Make my check with my feeler gauge. And there it goes. It is like sliding in just with just a tiny little bit of friction. So that's what we're looking for. And the next thing we're going to do for performance with our spark plug is take a marker, and you want to mark the back side. Like here's your electrode. The arm is coming up. It's open over on this side. So on the closed end, just draw a line on the back of your spark plug. And what we're going to do now is index the plug. Or specifically what we're going to do is check the index, because I don't have any indexing washers right now. But what we're trying to do is install the plug so this open end is facing the valves, because you've got your valves, and then your spark plug is going to be like right here relative to the valves, or right here relative to the valves. So you want the plug, when it's sitting in between those two valves, to face that open spot, to face that gap between those two valves. And that way you're aimed at the mixture instead of basically creating an area protecting the spark from the mixture by having it backwards. So let's see if we get lucky here. And you can torque in a spark plug, or you can go by screwing in until it touches and then turn it usually about a half of a turn to crush the crush washer. And of course, this one has already been in once. This is the plug that came out of the engine. So that crush washer has already been crushed one time, which means I probably only want to go about a 1/12 of a turn to tighten it up. So that's what I'm going to do, right about like that. You don't want to get it too tight. You're going into an aluminum head. This steel plug will screw the head up. So that's good, and we actually are pretty solid. The ideal would be right like this, and I'm off just a tiny little bit. I have just a little bit of angle to the direction of the valves, and it's actually facing the intake valve slightly. So pretty good. Next thing we have to do is put the coil on. Actually, the next thing we have to do is figure out where to put the coil. When you install a coil, you need to gap it. The coil is not supposed to be touching the flywheel. This is an arc flywheel. They recommend 30 thousandths gap. I think they actually say at least a 30 thousandths gap. This is the stock coil. I probably don't want to go much farther than that because this may not be the most powerful coil ever. Get too far away, it may not fire. Now I have these cool old Echo coil air gap tools that you use to check your gap. These things are 14 thousandths each, which would give me 28 thousandths, which is pretty close to what they're asking for. If you don't have something like these, I'm holding them the right way up, what you can do is take like a business card, which is what this was, and I just cut it into 3 pieces. You might want to measure it with a mic first, but this business card was about 9 thousandths thick. So 3 of them is 27 thousandths. And actually when you stack them all together and mic it, it comes out pretty close to 30 thousandths. So I've got my magnet right here. I'm going to put my spacers, my business card spacers in place. Get that lined up. Figure out what I did with the screws. Cross my fingers that I didn't accidentally install the thing upside down, because quite honestly I haven't seen this in a while, so I could easily have done that. I don't think I did though. Get my line underneath here, hook our spark plug back up, and I've got the kill switch wire here. I need to reroute it back over to this side. I do have the kill switch, stock kill switch. I'm going to probably put it in a little dash up front because I want to be able to shut the motor off while I'm sitting in it. But for now, I'll just hook it up to this and put the ground on one of the bolts on the blower housing. Got the blower housing on. I didn't film that, just 4 bolts, put it in there. If you're putting it on and you have a little bit of trouble, just give your recoil a little jiggle so that the clutching mechanism can line up. I've got the gas tank I talked about in the last episode installed here. This gas tank is actually a coolant recovery tank I got off of Amazon. It was only like 50 bucks. It has a clear line so you can tell what your volume level is. I'm interested to see how this holds up to gasoline. It's intended for automotive use, so it should be fine. I did have to change the fittings. Got a little short thing I'll show about that right now. This is the tank I'm going to use. It is a coolant recovery tank. It's got plenty of spots to thread into here. The issue is that the fittings that came with it are way too big. They're much too big. I need like a 1/4 inch or 3/16 fitting at the most. So I bought some, these are 5/16 by 1/4 barbs. This is the 5/16 part. This is the 1/4 inch part. This is maybe still a little too big. If I have to, I can probably neck it down a little bit. The problem with these is these original barb fittings use an O-ring to seal, and these use basically an interference fit to seal. They tighten up. There's actually a taper. This is slightly tapered, and it tightens up as you screw it in. That does not work on these. These way these are threaded is just way too loose. They thread all the way down, and they're basically the only reason it's wiggly. And then if I tightened it up, it wouldn't be wiggly, but I still wouldn't have a good enough seal, especially for gasoline. So what I did was put a little groove in there, just like this. I've taken the O-ring off of this one, and I just put a groove in this barb that should fit that O-ring. I may have to widen it just a little bit, but this should fit that O-ring so that this will seal. I'm probably also going to go ahead and put some tape, Teflon tape on there as well, and cross my fingers that it doesn't leak. I'm hoping that this doesn't leak. I have not tried it yet. We're going to find out right now. Get the cap on top. There it is. All right, this is the fuel I'm using in this is 90 octane ethanol free, which I use in all of my power equipment. I'm not going to put a whole lot of gasoline in here because if it does leak, I don't want to have to clean up too big of a mess. All right, that should be enough for test purposes. Can you see it there? Look at that. I mean, right there, you see that line? The hose is not immediately dissolved, so maybe it'll hold up okay. Let's put the gas cap back on. And I did kind of a dumb thing that you really shouldn't do, is I put gasoline in the gas tank before I put oil in the motor. Always make sure you got oil in the motor. This, in my case, I took the oil sensor out, so if it was out of oil, it would still fire right up and lock the motor up right away. I wanted to take that sensor out because this go-kart is going to be rocking back and forth a lot, and the oil sensor will think there's no oil in there. When the oil sloshes, it'll make the oil, make the sensor kill the motor, and so you'll get stumbling and stuff like that. Also, the sensor is pretty big, and I would rather have that space for more oil than for the sensor. So I'm going to put some oil in it right now. I'm going to put some 10W40 in there because that's what I got. And it'll be a good startup, run it, and then I'll probably dump it out and put fresh in it before too long. All right, I definitely got enough oil in here. This holds like about a quart. I was filling it with this 1 gallon jug, so of course I overfilled it and it ran everywhere. But at least I know it's got enough oil in it. This is just some, CarQuest brand 10W40. It does have the current, API, what do we got here? SP, SM, plus SN, SMCF designation on it. So this is decent oil. It's good oil. It's not, it is house brand, but it is a decent oil, especially for startup purposes. When it comes to running it, I've actually got some, some Maxima, some high-end motorcycle oil. I might end up running that in it. So now it's time to see if it will prime. I've got all the hoses hooked up. The line from the fuel tank to the pump is showing fuel in the bottom half of it. I have not even pulled it over yet. This is going to be the first time I pull it over. I'm going to see what happens and see if how this pump will prime up on its own. It's possible that I will have to run fuel into it to get it to completely prime. We're going to find out in just a second. Make sure I do have it switched on. Got the little safety switch dangling here and bolted to the block so I can shut it off in case it runs away or something crazy like that. And we'll put this one out here. Okay, there we go. Give it some gentle pulls and see if that apparently was the torque converter was sticking a little bit. Okay, it does want to prime full. I'm going to have to pull it over pretty hard a couple of times because every time I pull it, the fuel comes up in the fuel line and slowly runs back down. So we're going to give it a couple of little, see if we can get some fuel up in here. All right, see fuel coming up here. Need to push this all the way down, seal the carburetor. All right, now I might want to pull the choke out. Switch is on. All right. Oh yeah. I'm going to put on some hearing protection since it's probably going to be pretty freaking loud. I think my fuel bowl level's a little too high. I'm getting fuel out of the drain line. Let's see here. All right, so we got to start. I'm definitely getting too much fuel. I need to figure out what's going on with that. But we did get a start. All right, I had a little problem, which I'm going to go to in just a minute. I'm going to crank it back up again. Let's let it fire up. Should fire up. Maybe not. Switch it on. Pretty pleased with that overall. It definitely runs. The bolts I had holding it to the cart came loose almost immediately, which I just basically finger tightened them, but you know, whatever. Having an issue right here with this this line is, you can see fuel dripping out of here. This is the overflow for the bowl. So either the bowl level is too high or this pump is putting out too much pressure. And one of the two is causing this problem. I'm not sure which one. So I need to figure out that. I may have to put in a return basically with like a check ball or a bleed in it to bleed back to the tank to drop the fuel pressure. I might have to take care of that. And now I'm going to show you why it quit. This is why it quit. A couple of videos ago, I put new clutch springs in this thing to change the RPM, engagement RPM. This is a clone torque converter. It blew the torque converter apart. The torque converter was tight. It was assembled, as so far as I know, correctly, because it's pretty hard to put one together incorrectly. And it basically, this thing came apart and split the shell. And I'm going to put this in the lathe. I'll show you how bent this is. It'll show up better in the lathe. I actually tapped it back into round some. I'm going to see if I can get it back into shape and try it again. But this thing came apart and the belt locked the motor up. That's why it quit the first time. Alright, I got this thing in the lathe. Turn the lathe on. And you can see it is out of round now. So I'm going to try and get it back into round and try and use it. And if not, I will just get another one. But yeah, that I wish I got into diagnosis mode and I did not even think about taking footage of what was going on. I just immediately took it apart to see what the heck the deal was. And it basically, where's that thing at? It just knocked this thing apart. It was like the garter springs were off of it. The thing was in two pieces. Or not quite in two pieces. These little rods were still holding it together. But it had definitely come apart. So I'm going to try and patch this up and stick it back together again. But this, that was exciting. Well, that went pretty good. It fired right up. Nothing fell off the motor. There's no oil leaks. Looks like I got a little bit too much fuel pressure maybe, or possibly the float is a little too high. We can fix that. It's not a big problem. As a matter of fact, the only thing that went wrong is the torque converter exploded. So I'm going to see if I can fix that up. If I can't, I'll buy another one. I might even break down and buy a comic. So as always, like, subscribe, and please leave a comment. Have a great day. Okay, I got my torque converter back together again. I was able to straighten that bell out. I may still order another one because who knows, it's been compromised at this point. But you know what? We're going to have a little bonus. Go ahead and start it, and maybe it'll fly apart again on camera. So let's see what happens. Actually, almost looks like the belt is trying to come off of the pulley assembly. I am definitely going to have to take a closer look at this thing and see what is going on here. So something seems to be up.